Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Catholic Talk Show. Today, we're going to be doing something fun. We're going to be ranking the modern popes.
That's right. We're going to take a look at every pope since the fall of the Papal States until the current pope, Pope Leo XIV, and we're going to put them on a ranking and explain why. It's going to be a fun episode. Stick around.
Man, good thing we have you on this show, Ryan Shield, because I don't know all the modern popes. You do, so.
Well, I think,
look,
this is going to be arbitrary. It's going to be fun. We're going to take a look at all the popes. And for this exercise, we're defining a modern pope all the way to Pius IX, which is after the fall of the Papal States, when the pope no longer has territory that he rules as a secular sovereign governor, up until the current pope. So that's what I'm largely defining as the modern popes.
Era.
It's going to be that era. So going to be a lot of fun. I'll share the link so you can make your own ranking using the same system. And you can share that with us and let us know what we got wrong and where you disagree. Now, before we get started, make sure you click the like and subscribe button. It's the easiest way you could participate in the mission of the Catholic Talk Show. And when we look at our stats on YouTube, it shows that over 75% of the people who watch this show, statistically right now, don't click the subscribe button. So easy, takes 1 second, and we really appreciate it. All right, let's jump right in, Ryan. So we're using this little platform here today, not affiliated, but it's a fun platform. And I see these a lot. I'll see them with quarterbacks or the greatest, pitchers or power hitters of all time. And I saw this, I thought this would be fun for us to go through. So ranking the modern popes, 1846 to 2025.
And the thing is I think in ranking these, I mean, many of these popes are, it's kind of like if you rank a quarterback or you rank, they all have different dynamics and different ways that they, operate on the field, different talents that they bring as that position. So it'll be kind of fun to dive into some of these things and hopefully establish some sort of like anthropology within this that, has some connectivity between the church's wisdom and how she elects popes.
That's right. So look, a lot of people are going to disagree. Let us know why you disagree. Make your own tier using the same page. Share it with us. But so Ryan, do you want to start from the oldest pope? Do you want to start from the most current pope, or do you just want to just randomly pick? Why don't we just randomly pick? That way we're not.
Yeah, it's arbitrary.
All right. So let's start off with Pope Paul VI, Pope St. Paul VI. I know you like him quite a bit. He did a lot of really important things. And I think largely in this ranking, it's not just about virtue, because these were all virtuous, holy men, way more than me, way more than you. That's not what we're getting into. We're not getting into their sanctity. We're talking about their impact, their lasting impact, and their governance of the church. So let's use that as the criteria. So our tiers, Ryan, to explain them, we got S, which is just saint, superb. It's the best you can get, right? Mm-hmm. A, B, C, and D. Obviously, those are pretty explanatory. So let's talk a little bit about Pope Paul VI. Very important pope in history. I think finishing up the Second Vatican Council and the initial rollout of that is probably one of the more significant parts of his legacy. I think also his encyclical on
Humanae
Vitae.
Birth.
Yeah, Humanae Vitae on birth control, and that really important things. Very, I don't want to say divisive, but practically speaking, very divisive things in the history of the church, the Second Vatican Council and Humanae Vitae. And he was a pretty solid voice, and I think prophetic in talking about the impact of birth control that it would have on society, on women's psyche, on the relationship between men and women. So, looking at this list here, Ryan, where are you going to put Pope Paul VI?
Yeah, I mean, everybody that listens a lot knows that if I chose a pope name, it would be Pope Paul VI II. So he's definitely high on my list. Looking at Humanae Vitae and how the continuum that he began, it was really foundational in human dignity at a time where it was much needed. Very prophetic, a lot of ministries, organizations, the Catholic Church orthodoxy followed it, and a lot of ministries evolved to where I think, a lot of human lives were saved, not just with abortion, but through contraception and all these other things that he mentions in the document. So I would list him up there at the top for sure. Just the prophetic nature of that document among the other things that he was able to accomplish while Pope. So would I go to saint? I don't know. I think maybe we'd shuffle him around.
Well, he is a saint, so let's not qualify S as just a saint tier.
Right.
But is he the very top of the top?
Yeah. I mean, yes. I think I definitely put him at the top for that. I mean, it was, I've read that document probably 14 or 15 times, and it's always very striking to me how inspired that was by God. So
I'm thinking here, I'm not thinking the very top. I'm thinking maybe A tier.
Yeah.
I think
that was my initial thought, and then maybe at the end we could shuffle him around again, but definitely at the top.
Yeah, I think A tier is about right here, just for his impact, particularly through Humanae Vitae. I think the rollout of Vatican II could have been maybe a little bit
done better,
smoothly handled. I think a lot of people agree with that. So I think that prevents him from getting S. So let's do
like
that.
Yeah,
we are putting him at the A tier. All right, let's go then to Pope Pius IX. Okay, Pope Pius IX, really, really historical pope, really historically important pope, the longest serving pope in history, which I don't know if you knew that. So he was pope when the Papal States disintegrated with the reunification of Italy. He was the pope in captivity. He never left Vatican, St. Peter's, right? Because he was under protest that the secular government had taken lands that the church had governed and owned and operated for 1,500 years. But he also had some really important church matters, not just those secular matters, right? He defined the dogma of the Immaculate Conception. He held the First Vatican Council, which defined the teaching of papal infallibility. And he guided the church through one of the largest upheavals in the way the church operated in all of church history. I mean, it's right up there with the difference between being persecuted to being legalized under Constantine, from having the secular protection of your own lands to being a captive in the Vatican. So, I mean, one of the most historically important, and then if you look at Vatican I with the doctrine of papal infallibility and the Immaculate Conception, did some big things. So knowing that, where are we putting Pius IX?
Yeah.
For me, he's an S tier. I think that's one of the most important pontificates in history.
I do too. I think it was very broad too. It was not just the teaching, but it was also the way he handled the church in a very tumultuous time, and was guided by wisdom. I definitely think he was one of the best popes in history.
Yeah, and let me tell you, Ryan, that is one Italian looking fella right there.
He sits like one for sure.
I mean, I could just imagine this guy sitting out, in Rome, sitting on the street corner at a cafe, having some, I don't know, some biscotti dipped in his coffee, and just be like, he looks like someone in your family, Ryan.
Yeah. And
very Italian looking fella.
Yeah. And I also see a little bit of a mess on his chest from eating too, which
yeah, but I don't think that's going to hold it against him in the rankings. So we're putting him up at the S tier.
He ate well.
Yeah.
His whole life. He ate well.
His whole life. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to, this is a tricky one to rank. Pope John Paul I. Pope John Paul I. He was Pope for 33 days. The smiling Pope. I look at him and I just instinctively like him just looking at his picture. But he's one of the shortest popes ever. He didn't really get a chance to do very much besides make people happy, I guess, for his election. But so where do you put a pope who only reigned for 33 days and really didn't do anything of consequence?
Yeah, I don't know. There's really no no signature approach to anything that kind of gives us an understanding, other than the fact that through his passing, we were given John Paul II. So I definitely put him down lower, just because there's no, not because of his pontificate, but just because of the duration of it.
Well,
maybe almost even count him out of the whole list.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think that there's going to be any pope on this list, and I can hear the people already starting to type, that's going to get a D rank or lower. So what I just did is I just changed the D rank, the lowest rank, to incomplete. And I think that's the only place you can put Pope John Paul I. I mean, 33 days, didn't do anything of historical significance, didn't have a chance to, could have been a great pope. I mean, could have been a wonderful pope. So let's put him as incomplete. I think that's the only fair place to rank him, right?
Yeah.
And then talking about incomplete, since we just created that, I think it's only fair to put the current Pope Leo XIV there as well. I mean, he's been pope for less than a year. Everything's looking great. I feel like he's bringing a period of calmness to the church, which I think the church has been pretty riled up for the last 20 years, towards the end of the reign of Benedict and then all of Francis's pontificate. It's been a pretty wild time, relatively speaking. So I'm hoping that he gives kind of a nice, chill, even-keeled reign, which it seems like that's in his personality. But would you agree incomplete's the only proper place for him?
I would, but I am also very excited about his pontificate and being an American, what that would mean for our church, and just kind of waiting for that time to come where he, exercises his papal authority for the United States in some way. Yeah.
It's going to be awesome when he finally makes his first trip here, Ryan. That's going to be so much fun. Mm-hmm. All right, this one. Let's go to Pope Benedict XV. I feel like Pope Benedict XV is one of the less known or remembered popes in this era. And that's kind of unfortunate because he was a remarkable man, and he was pope during an incredibly difficult time, during World War I, where Europe was committing suicide. They were committing fratricide. They had this war where nation versus nation, brother versus brother. Europe tore itself apart and pretty much destroyed the fabric that had held Western Europe together for a millennium. And he was a massive advocate for peace. He did so much for humanitarian relief. He strove for peace. He tried so much, particularly through Blessed Karl in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, trying to get peace and trying to end this war. But unfortunately, he was largely ignored by the powers. There was just such bloodlust and such machinery in place to have this war that he wasn't really listened to. So even though he was a massive advocate for peace, it doesn't feel like he really had the impact that he wanted.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate because his presence was known in Europe. And a lot of the humanitarian efforts I think that he underwent would definitely put him up in like an A category for me. I don't think he quit, Yeah. He didn't lay down.
I'm going to have to put him, if I'm being objective, I'm going to have to put him as a C or a B, only because, at the time the church still had pretty significant influence. I would say even more influence than it does now directly over particular heads of state. And Europe tore itself apart and ignored him and ignored his calls for peace. Now, history is full of people ignoring people's calls for peace. I mean, we ignored Christ's calls for peace. So, I think B is probably about the right place for Benedict XV. Do we agree?
Yeah, I can agree to that. I was in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's the middle. All right. Pius X, Pope Saint Pius X. Let's talk about him a little bit and where he should rank here. So let me get my notes here. Now, Pope St. Pius X, I think largely remembered as one of the most personally holy saints, an incredibly, incredibly simple man. His father, a lot of the popes of this era were nobility. They were coming from ancient noble families, and he did not. I mean, he came from a very humble background. He was, but very, very intensely holy, and I think being pope when he was kind of gave the character of the pope going forward, when it was no longer a secular ruler. It really highlighted his place as a moral leader, as a and not that the pope shouldn't always have been a moral leader, but now that was the only real way to influence society. And I think he kind of cast that going forward. One of the big things is that he was the Pope of Holy Communion. He lowered the age that you could receive Holy Communion. He encouraged frequent reception. Before then, people would receive communion once or twice a year. And Pius X encouraged people to receive it frequently, daily if possible.
Daily.
He was very much against modernism, because we're still in a time period where you're having the post-industrial revolution. You have all these ideas of socialism and communism and atheism and Freemasonry and all this stuff. And he was a rock against all that stuff. So talking about all that, where are we putting Pope St. Pius X?
Yeah, just the influence he had on frequently attending Mass and the Eucharist, the consumption of the Eucharist. That started a big chain of events in the church. I think that was a pretty monumental thing. I'd put him up there. He's a saint too, as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree.
I put him at A or S.
Well, where do we want to put him? I'm of the opinion of S tier. A,
Me
S,
too.
A. Okay, let's put him at S
Well,
tier.
you're usually below me, so I'm just throwing that out there. I put him at S.
Yeah, I think S tier is the right place for him. Like I said, he established or reestablished or reintroduced the Pope as a moral leader at a time when people thought of popes as someone who was crowning emperors or making treaties or this, that. Like that was really important for the development of what the modern office of the Pope is. All right. Let's go to Pope St. John the 23rd. All right. Pope St. John the 23rd. Everyone loved him. Everyone loved him. The good Papa, right? He started the Second Vatican Council. He called that and brought it into into the church, and unfortunately he died before that council could complete. So I don't think we ever get to see what his true vision for that was. But he was Pope during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He was the Pope during really the height of the Cold War. Mm-hmm. And this was a time where people were terrified, right? Because they had just seen World War II, the most vicious event in human history, and people were terrified that Russia and the United States were going to destroy each other with nuclear bombs and take everyone with them. So it was a very pessimistic time. But he had this warmth, this optimism, and this hope that the modern world could live in peace, can coexist, and to bring sanctity into the modern world. And I think that's what he's trying to do with Vatican II, although that's conjecture since you didn't make it. But a very pastoral Pope. People loved him. Good Pope John. Where are we putting him?
Yeah, I definitely put him at the A or B level there.
Okay. I'm thinking A or B too. Let's decide here, because A or B. Okay, number one, he's a saint. But again, this list is not just on sanctity. Because he died in the middle of the council, I think there's a bit of an incomplete grade on where he was going with it, right?
But yet he still had a papacy that we can acknowledge. So
right. So to me, could have been a clear case A, but because it's incomplete, we don't know.
I would say B because of that.
I think so too. I think that's, and you know what? He's probably like, yeah, he's probably.
I don't care. I'm in heaven.
That's fine. All right. Pope Leo XIII. Now, Pope Leo XIII, for I would say maybe the last 50 years, was starting to be relegated a bit to, wow, that's back, way back, right? And was not being forgotten, but was not really front of mind in the church. But I think as, AI develops, as we see so many infringement on the dignity of man through technology, through modern capital, through communism, socialism going on in the world, his Rerum Novarum and the rights of workers established Catholic social teaching. And this was, and we can see this in Pope Leo XIV calling back and bringing his name because of that, because I think he is forecasting how important Leo XIII's teachings are going to be and how much they need to be reevaluated, rediscovered as we race into the 21st century, blind and scared, right? He also did some other, he wrote the St. Michael prayer, which was, he was a man of deep faith. But I think his big legacy is Rerum Novarum.
I am definitely putting him at an A. I think his response to the Industrial Revolution was very prophetic, much like Paul VI to the Cultural Revolution. It's something we, as a church, continually draw from as a wellspring in more modern times. Not a departure from, but something that we reevaluate and continue. So I definitely put him at an A.
I'm thinking an S, because I think his pontificate and Rerum Novarum defined, again, in this post-papal states pontificate world. So if
like even a broader way, Catholic social teaching was defined.
Right.
I see what you're saying.
So like if Pius X defined how the Pope would be a moral leader, Leo XIII defined how the church would address the outside world, how it would address with a moral voice the things that were happening that were not necessarily of a religious nature.
Good point.
So I think his impact and the fact that he's now maybe being even rediscovered and more important in his teachings than ever, I think that shows kind of that long burn of how important he was. I would put him as an S tier.
Go for it. I like it.
Let's do it. I like it. All right. Pope Pius XI. Another one that I don't think history remembers quite as well as they should. He was Pope from 1922 to 1939, and that was a very strange period in the history of the world. It's right after World War I, and World War I tore apart the world, tore apart institutions, tore apart people's faiths. It changed the way people looked at the world. So there was a massive change in how people were exercising their faith. There was the rise of all these communist movements during that time, socialist movements, of atheism, of nihilism, right? People were like, look, where is God if millions of people can die in mustard gas attacks in a trench? Where is God in all of this? So it was a crazy time. Then you have the rise of fascism, nationalism, the rise of the Soviet Union. I know it was a very transitional time, and he was Pope from the end of World War I to the beginning of World War II. So he's kind of a tweener in these crazy historical epochs, I don't know. I think, he tried to confront these things, but how effective was he in warning the world or preparing the church for what was going to happen? I don't know, and again, he's probably the Pope on this list that I know the least about. And because that was such a weird, marginalized time in the church. So my inclination is to go B here.
Yeah. I was thinking B or C. Yep.
Yeah. Because look, if you and I, and we're, have a Catholic podcast and we talk about saints all the time and we talk about popes all the time, and if we can't really point to what his legacy was, I doubt very many people could. I could be wrong. I'm sure there's somebody out there who has a personal devotion to Pius XI who's screaming at the screen right now, but I'm feeling B just because, that's limited long-term impact, I guess I would say.
That's a good point.
All right. Now we're getting to some popes that I think that there's going to be a lot of debate online. And again, I'm going to share the link. The link is in the comments below. Go and you can fill out your own tier and share it with us and let us know where we're wrong. I know you're all screaming at us that we're getting this incorrect. So we'd love to hear your comments. All right. John Paul II.
Saint John Paul. Saint Pope John Paul II.
I mean, global superstar, stabilized the church after the sexual revolution, after Vatican II, defined, I think, visually and in activity what a pope should do. Went to all these countries, stood up in the face of communism, went into Poland, inspired, the freedom movements and, Lech Walesa, and spoke clearly on abortion and spoke clearly on human rights, and I mean, just incredibly prayerful. The way he died and showed people the dignity of the dying, the way he lived and showed how vibrant people could be. I don't think there's a doubt that he's the S tier. Now, I think there will be some people who will say the church in that period had a pretty spotty record on sexual abuse. And that's the thing that I will commonly see people point towards as a detraction from Pope St. John Paul II. There's never been anything that's specifically tied to him saying that he knew or specifically covered up. But, besides that, I can't think of a more perfect man to hold the office of Pope, and just the way that he exercised it with courage, hope, and, the whole concept of being not afraid. I mean, we're putting him at S, right?
Yeah. I mean, I frankly, with the sexual, stuff in the church, I don't know that he was given the right. I mean, there's a lot of really sick people that pass through his office and through the Vatican. It's very unfortunate. That's the only thing that takes me down, because it's just such a horrible thing in our church, and it impacted a lot of people. And I don't think he was aware of it. I'm certain of it. But the, theology of the body, which was a deposit through his Wednesday audiences, the World Youth Days, like you're talking about tens of millions, if not 100 million people he's reached already through that initiative of evangelization. Then you talk about getting through communism, what he did with Reagan, Gorbachev, the finger wag at Castro. Yeah. I definitely put him at an S.
I think that's going to be the biggest consensus. So, all right.
He's my Pope.
He's my Pope too.
My Pope.
All right. Now we're getting into ones that I think are going to be the most controversial. Okay. Pius XII, Benedict XVI, and Francis. Let's go with Pius XII. All right. So Pius XII, to me, in my mind, I don't know, in his mannerisms, I've said this before, in his mannerisms, in the way that he carried himself, in the way that he allowed the world to see the continuity of the church in the office of St. Peter is the best. He looks like a pope to me. Like, if you had to go to somebody and say, we're going to use a police sketch artist and we're going to try to come up with a pope, they would come up with Pius XII, right? Just liturgically, the way he spoke, his mannerisms, just
yep, I agree.
Dude knew how to pope. He defined the Assumption of Mary. He was the Pope during World War II. I mean, if you've never heard about it, we've done episodes on this before, but I mean, he was leading plots to counter Hitler.
Yeah.
Hitler tried to have him kidnapped. Pius XII had a plot to have Hitler assassinated, which is crazy. The Pope's planning to have the leader of a country killed. Crazy stuff. A lot of people will then, though, point to him and saying that the church didn't do enough to protect the Jewish population in Europe during the Holocaust. And that's largely, and that is untrue. That was slander. It's been proven that that was slander that was started by the KGB, by the NKVD, by Soviet Russia to undermine the moral authority of the church. And they were funding and putting out propaganda saying that he was Hitler's pope and that he was not, that the church under him did not do enough because there was the concordat between Mussolini and the church to settle the Vatican question, all of that. So he was very, very unfairly slandered and maligned. To me, I think it's a real shame that his cause for canonization has not progressed further. And I think we're just going to have to get further away in history for that to happen. But I truly believe that this man was a saint. That being said, I think he's probably, in the modern popes, the one where scholars and the public disagree the most on his legacy. To me, very hard to rank Pius XII.
Yeah. Another pope that we're going to draw a lot from in the modern era that we live in. I'm kind of thinking a S here. I don't know what I would point to
that he could have done better. You know, my inclination, and I love him, my inclination is to put him at an S. But, you know, like when you're looking at, I don't know, Roman emperors, they always say there's two ways to evaluate a Roman emperor. Number one, what he did, and then how he prepared the empire to be passed off to his successor. The one thing that I would point to with Pius XII is maybe the church was not prepared for what would happen after he was gone. Because, I mean, he was pope for 1939 to 1958, a long reign, an important reign. I mean, they were fighting communists and Nazis and world wars and church of spies and the rise of modernism. But then you see that right after he dies, we have the era of Vatican II and all these questions that were unanswered in the church and all these kind of simmering things that it felt like people were waiting for this pope to die to then let the pot boil over. So
that's a really good point.
You know, I would say that if I were to critique, and God knows I'm nobody worthy of critiquing a pope, I would not put him at S for the fact that I think there's a lot of pins put in things that maybe could have been cut off at the past, whether it's liturgically, you know, whether it's, you know, the change of the Holy Week Mass in 1955 and how that led to the change of the Mass and all this. My inclination is to go A here and not S for that reason.
That's a good point.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, you know, you would hope that the next pope would follow up in that faithfulness to the previous pope too. So I don't think that's all on him, but definitely something you could scratch the surface on and put him in an A.
Yeah, and I don't think that any pope comes in and says, well, the last pope was kind of a clunker and I'm going to go in and redo everything he did. I think it's a lot of times, you know, they come in, you know, like using the sports analogy, you get a new head coach, but you come in day one, you got no quarterback, you got no line, your safeties are terrible, and you got no offense. And everyone's like, well, you're a bad coach. Well, I kind of inherited a bad situation. So let's put him at A for that reason.
Fair enough.
Okay. Now we're getting into the nitty gritty. Pope Benedict XVI.
Yeah, the two most recent popes. Yeah. Leo.
Pope Benedict XVI. My personal favorite on this list. I love this guy. He was, you know, I would say John Paul was my pope. You know, he's the pope when I was born. He's the pope until I was an adult. But Benedict XVI, I think his writings and his pontificate engaged with my intellect in a way that brought me back to the church after, you know, everyone's a teenager and a young man and, you know, you don't think about religion, but his style really engaged me. But, you know, there was a lot of things going on during his pontificate that could have been handled better. Sexual abuse, the church financial scandals. I mean, he'll point to that, or he pointed to that as one of the reasons he resigned. And then I don't think you can overlook his resignation. You know, that's pretty controversial. I mean, you have the Pope and you got a bunch of problems, and he prayed a ton about it. And then you have to judge historically, was it wise for the Pope to say, I don't have enough strength to handle these problems, it's better for someone else? Or should he have prayed for the strength to find it and figure these problems out? You know, that's, I think, where the trouble with him comes in. Now, a lot of people love him for his take on liturgy and for the way that he kind of restored some tradition, but all of those things were largely swept away by his successor. You know, some more the Latin Mass that he kind of, Summorum Pontificum, that got wiped away. A lot of his legacy got wiped away. So how deep were the roots on that? And personally, like I said, my favorite saint, but I don't know how kind history will be to his actual time as Pope.
Yeah, I mean, I followed him when he was Cardinal Ratzinger. You know, I loved his writings, the way he taught, his intellect, his gentleness, but also clarity. As a writer, as somebody who I learned so much from, you know, he's on the top of my list. But when you look at the pontificate, I do think I agree with a lot of your sentiment. It's a time that needed action and leadership in areas that were not, you know, pleasant to go into. And, you know, whether or not, I mean, obviously he's definitely a man of prayer. Maybe God called him to this, and this is what, you know, he felt called to do. So I don't want to like disparage him on that. But if you look at that, the pontificate doesn't leave this legacy that we're drawing from. You basically just love this guy, right?
Yeah.
And the pontificate leaves some things to be desired for sure.
He did establish what the precedent would be for a pope to retire or to abdicate, you know, and he essentially created the office of Pope Emeritus. I think he showed incredible restraint while he was emeritus to not undermine the Pope and to make it very clear that he was not the Pope and that there wasn't two popes. So I think that was an important historical precedence. But I guess to me, and like I said, my favorite Pope on this list is right guy, wrong time. Right? You know, that if it weren't such a time that demanded, I would say, administrative skills,
right,
and not theological skills, he would have been a wonderful Pope. If he was Pope during the Middle Ages, I mean, everyone would be like, wow, this is the greatest theologian Pope of all time. Yeah. But because I think the world, or at least the administration of the church, needed more of a administrator type,
needed somebody it needed somebody that had organizational acumen and then courage to go up against a lot of, you know, people doing evil in the church, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and look, he was JP2's right-hand guy. His pontificate was kind of a continuation of John Paul II.
They were perfect together. Like, he was a Congregation Doctrine of Faith. Like, those two were like a yin and yang, right? Because, you know, John Paul was out evangelizing. He picked these, you know, topics of culture and state, you know, politics and these things that were very important, while he was underneath him, just, you know, basically making sure that all of the faith was intact, which is like I said, I really appreciated him. I do think that those two and that combination was incredibly powerful in the church when it existed.
I think if we looked at this list in 100 years or 500 years, when people don't really care about the politics at the time, or the, you know, no one remembers, you know, what the tax policy was under Pope Gregory the First. They don't care, right? So when you start looking at his writings, you start looking at the legacy of the deposit of faith and how he protected the faith as was handed down to him, which is the job of the Pope, not to innovate, but to protect the faith. I think he'll be more kindly viewed in the
Yeah.
future. But right now, living through it and seeing that there was such a mess in the church, and a lot of people will say, look, it feels like the house got messy and dad left, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I think right now, like I said, this is probably the most controversial one for me. My favorite guy on the list, the one who I think rekindled the faith in me as Pope, a B. I don't know how else you could really rank him. I mean, it's almost incomplete because again, he abdicated, but I think B is probably the right ranking right now, historically speaking.
Yeah. And the tenure wasn't very long.
Yeah.
Didn't really have enough time
2005.
yeah.
All right. Okay. And this is the one that probably everyone's like, oh boy, where are we going with this? Pope Francis. So look, to recap real quick. All right. We got our S tiers. We got Pius IX. We got Pius X, Leo XIII, and John Paul II. I think those ones are all pretty easy to put onto the S tier.
Mhm.
Your A tier, you have Pope St. Paul VI and Pius XII. I think both of them had massive cultural impact and massive impact on the governance of the church. In your B tier, you had popes who were either kind of ignored or kind of tweener era popes, Benedict XV, Pius XI, John the 23rd kind of died early in office in the middle of a huge initiative, and Benedict the 16th who abdicated, right? And then you have our incompletes of John Paul I and Leo the 14th. So now going into Pope Francis, and this is the one that I think is going to be everyone's going to have the most opinion on because we're just a year out from it. And it's kind of unfair to rank him now, just 1 year after, not even a year since he passed. But I can't remember any more controversy around the church between people in the church than while he was Pope. And I think a lot of it was very unfair to him because I do believe truly he was a wonderfully good man and had great intentions, but his style of poping was very different than anyone had ever seen. So let's talk about that. What do you think?
I agree. I think because of the internet and because of commentary and lack of true understanding of who he was as a person, it just fueled all these things that caused division in the church. I don't know that that a pope can cause it necessarily than the culture itself, and how people struggle to agree with people or just agree to disagree and be pleasant to each other. But I do think there's a lot of things that he did that were very good. I think he led by an example as a person. It was just in the publicity and the clarity that was lacking in a lot of the statements that he was making, I think just caused a big ruckus, I don't know that he knew that that's what was going to happen.
He's a smart guy. I think he knew what was going on and saw it. I think that was his Jesuit style, right? Go in, create a mess and let people try to figure it out. And then land the plane in the most acceptable place once people have done the sorting. It's like go make a mess, and then when people clean up, what does it look like? And yes, that's kind of where it should go. So kind of maybe a mess by intention. He even said, "Look, go out and make a mess in the church."
Yeah,
but he was the Pope, I would think, in what I would call the dawn of the social media era, in the CNN, Fox News era, where everybody's treated like a politician left and right. And, so that was kind of a cultural novelty, in the way that he was assessed and the way that he was viewed. But I remember early in his pontificate, before it got all political online and I'm anti-Francis, not my Pope. You have your Father Altmans and all this, and you have the whatever veganos and all this. I remember him going out and hugging the guy who was all disfigured, thinking, okay, that's great to see a Pope go out and smell like the sheep. I remember his care for the poor, his care for the most marginalized, going to going to a prison and washing the feet of a Muslim on, during Holy Week. A lot of people hated that, but I'm also like, that's also like going to the furthest reaches to bring the church and the message of the church. So it's kind of,
one of the things
he was challenging, dude. He was very challenging in how to feel about it.
Oh yeah, and he was very Franciscan in a sense. I mean, he tells priests to, a lot of priests are lonely, and this is globally. A lot of priests are lonely, and it takes a lot of time to have a lot of families to serve. And he, he said the priest should smell like their flock. And I just thought that was so beautiful, so Franciscan. It's like when you die to yourself and enter into the other, as a, from a pastoral standpoint, as a priest, you do smell like you're, you're literally entering into their homes, you're struggling with them. You're
we know a lot of priests, they wear that all over them, dude. They go out and they go do marriage counseling and the death of a child and the death of a parent, people losing their jobs, people in hospitals. I mean, they wear that on them like a cloud, right, dude? And
that's right.
You do smell like it spiritually, you really do.
Yep. And we both know priests like that, and that's all they care about, right? Is bringing people to Christ, walking with people and they're struggling, counseling people to make sure that they don't make decisions that are going to harm other people, including themselves. Like the understanding that the gravity of that in their lives is something that needs to be met as a priest. I think he really defined that and spoke of it, from an evangelization standpoint.
That being said, you have things like the unclarity around church teaching.
Right.
You have things like communion for the divorced and remarried, unclarity around women deacons, and you had things like the synodality and the role of that in the church. And I think a lot of people felt less clear about what the church taught under him than in any point in history. Now, to me, that's, as a man, as a heart, I can't find any fault with him. But in the lack of clarity, and that really could be just the media. And I fell victim to the way the media portrayed him. He was very clear.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's entirely true, because I mean, I read these documents. I hear what he's saying. I'm not the guy who reads the headline when it comes to the church and makes my mind up.
Yeah. And sometimes he'll come back later and make a clear statement. It was like, why did you cause such a ruckus when, you eventually made a statement about, this is never okay. Right. So I like you said, you never know if there's some lasting impression that he's going to leave on the church by doing that. The rigidity of rule following and then the mystical reality of communion with God and each other. They're never at odds, but I think sometimes people lean into one or the other. And he definitely lent himself to, the former on that.
All right. So where are we putting them now? Hey, look, before we rank them, I'm going to pull the YouTube trick here. I'm going to pull the TV trick. Now, before we rank the final Pope, Pope Francis here, click like and subscribe. Go ahead, click the button. Takes 1 second. Easiest way you can help us out. If you want to support the show, you can go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Patreon. You can see all the different tiers on there that you can support us, anywhere from just $5 and more. And we got great gifts that we could send you in our gratitude. But when you all come together, it allows us to continue to make this show. The weather's really bad, so we're not in the studio right now, but we're going to be down in the studio next week. And without you, we couldn't afford to do that. We couldn't afford to get the flights down there and to turn on the lights and pay the editor and get all the cool things on there that we do. So it's through your generosity that we're able to continue to make this show. So go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Patreon. And the final thing, two other things. go out, check out our sponsor, Hallow. Hallow is the #1 Catholic prayer app. They got some awesome things coming up for Lent. They're going through the Dostoevsky book. They're going to be doing so many different Lenten challenges, the Pray 40 challenge with all these great leaders. You can try out you can try out Hallow free for Lent by going to CatholicTalkShow.com/Hallow. Get it free, try it out, see if it's something that can transform Lent for you this year. And finally, if you want to join us on pilgrimage to the Holy Land in 2026, we're going to be going in June. We're going to all the major sites associated with Christ's life and ministry and death and resurrection. We're going to Bethlehem, Nazareth. We're going to go to the Holy Sepulchre, the Dead Sea. We're going to be going to the Jordan River, the Sea of Galilee. We're going to be going to Mount Carmel and the Mountain of Beatitudes. We're going to go to all the most important and incredible places that you've always heard in the Bible. If you want to join us, there's very few spots available, but you can go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Holy Land to learn more. All right, Ryan, you see what I did there? We baited them with the last ranking, and then we did all of our promotions that we have to do. Important. We can't do the show without those things, and you can't join us in the Holy Land without us letting you know. So, where do you rank Francis?
I don't think there's enough time after his pontificate to rank him with like a definitive mark, but I would definitely say in the low A, high B range would be where I sit, somewhere in that.
See,
I know you're a B. I know you're a B.
That's generous. My first inclination was C.
Yeah.
But also, if I wasn't such a jerk and if I really listened to how he said to treat people, and if I really evaluated how that lined up with what Christ asks us to do and how we are going to be judged at our judgment, then maybe he's an S, right? That's why he's so difficult for me, because I think he was very personally challenging for me. It's easy for me to look at Benedict the 16th and say, look at these books. Look at how scholastic and intellectual he is. I love this. I get this. This is wonderful. I can sit in my house and I can read this and be like, yes, God is mysterious and wonderful. But Francis saying, go wash the feet of
and I know
a
some
transgender person with AIDS. I'm like, dude, really? Come on.
Yeah. And
that's
I know
what Jesus asked us to do.
Right. And I know some priests that have been several that have been very impacted by his papacy. So I think sometimes we can get the wrong impression online. So I'm kind of in the process of like, hey, this isn't, I think he gets way too much flack. And
I do too.
I really do. And I think he's a B or an A, honestly. I would say B to be safe, but
I don't think he's a B. He is not a B, because a B is just like, it could go either way. He could not go either way. He was either an A or a C. But I think because it's so short before his,
it's too
early. I think the only fair thing to his legacy is to mark him incomplete. I think that's the only thing that's fair to his legacy right now. I mean, that might be taking the easy way out.
No.
But I think it's the true. I think it's the right way. I think it's been less than a year. I think incomplete is the only fair thing as a Catholic who's being really objective to say, I don't know how his legacy is going to impact the world.
I agree, because the internet can always calm down and this will all be forgotten. These parts that we're struggling with. I agree with you, man. I think that's a good call. I think that's a fair call.
Incomplete. I created a new tier.
Too early.
It's too early. And
it's too early.
It's too early. It's just too early.
It's too early, man. It's too early.
Now look, everyone's going to disagree with us, but here's our list, right? Here's our list. So we got our final rankings. No one got a C, which is good to see.
Yeah.
Right. Good to see that no one got a C. That's
It was close. It was close.
So
that's great. It'll be good to be back in the studio with you next week. That's going to be a lot of fun. I always enjoy that. Father Michael's ready to go.
Father Michael, I mean, the response to Father Michael being on the show with us has been completely overwhelming. People love him. And he fits right in. The new studio looks beautiful. I'm in 14 inches of snow right now, so I won't mind going down to the Gulf of America and record right there on the beautiful shores of the Gulf of America in Palm Coast.
It's still going to be cold.
Panama. Ryan, it's like -4 here. Okay. I live in the Arctic Circle.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a joy. Now, listen, if you enjoyed this episode, if you want to make your own ranking of these and share it with us, there's a link that allows you to go to this exact page and make your own version of it. You can share it with us, or just leave it in the comments and let us know what we got wrong, what you disagree with, and where you would change what we did. Again, completely unscientific ranking system here. This is just based off of us, but let's always pray for the popes. Let's pray for the current Pope Leo XIV, that he makes it to that S tier. I think he has that potential. Let's pray for the intercession of all these popes, particularly those who are sainted, blessed, and servants of God, that they pray for the church. They pray for us as individuals. And, this is a lot of fun. I'd like to do more episodes of these rankings. We can maybe do early popes or saints, or we could do the religious orders too. I think this system, if you like this ranking system, let us know. We'll make more episodes like this.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I enjoyed that. It's fun to talk through some of these things and learn about a few popes, and
see what we did there. You thought we were coming here for rankings. You thought we were coming here for rankings and we were just going to talk crap. But what we really did is we talked to you about the popes for the last
better than crap
years.
How about that?
Look at that.
Shaka Khan.
Shaka Khan.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Be safe out there if you're getting pummeled with snow. Know that we're praying for you. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.